Hi everyone, today's date is the 26th of November 2021 and it's now been 2 years from when I started doing DCT back in 19th of November 2019, and I was just about then to turn 38 and I've now just turned 40, and I was hoping by this point I would be cured, but I'm not. Had a lot of setbacks. As I explained previously, I came away from DCT and I was recently on the forum on there, and some people asked how I was, and I'm not going to be nasty. I was quite honest with the problems that I'd encountered with my feet. And unfortunately, I was consequently kicked off, banned from the forum within 48 hours, which is unfortunate. It wasn't nasty, just putting on there what had happened. I explained obviously as well, I've been doing somatics, and somatics is good. And it's very gentle on the body, less risk of injuries. Is it a cure? I don't know. For me, I'm struggling getting to the root of where the symptoms are. There is another methodology out there, another type of let's say way of looking at the body in terms of resolving the body, in terms of looking at patterns and why these patterns form. And at some point I am going to go down to London and meet the UK's only practitioner in this method. I don't want to say too much at this point, because I don't want to make the mistakes I made with DCT and obviously filming my progress and then people getting disheartened. I mean, yes, people have said to me all about them early videos, you had those, miracles happen, and I did. My symptoms did reduce, and my foot issues improved dramatically. And then one day it was just catastrophe. I had a bleed doing one particular exercise. I then strained the tendon under the side of my foot under the ankle. I then started to get horrific pain on top of the feet, crushing pain, and now I'm losing numbness, pins and needles, burning, horrific problems with my feet that I didn't have before. Before it was just plantar fasciitis pain with the feet issue, and obviously the pelvic floor and potential neuralgia symptoms. And I did actually speak to one of the practitioners of somatics, and she agreed that DCT was the right approach in terms of trying to release tension, but she said it'd be just far too aggressive for people like me who have these nerve issues. Also as well, I recently tried doing some Reiki. I went to see a Reiki master, and it was extremely profound, the effects on my body doing Reiki. I don't know if anyone's ever tried it, but I had an out-of-body experience during the Reiki, and I felt like I'd left my body, and an enormous sense of well-being and emotion overcame me. And I could actually feel, there's no actual physical touch by the practitioner, but I could actually feel things moving in my body. And she actually got, what do they call it, not dowsing, they get little crystals on chains and they go over the chakras. And she said I was very spiritually open, but then when she got down to the pelvic area and further down, there was no movement in the crystal. And she felt with the energies that everything from the waist down was raw, and everything from the waist to the head was perfectly normal. And that's how I am in my body. Everything above the waist is light and relatively fluid on the whole, with no pain. And everything down just feels distorted, numb, like cold, tension, pain, nerve pain, golf ball sensations in the rectum, obviously opening my bowels flares that up. And she did say something to me quite interesting, herself being able to do this on herself. And she said she went through a period of her life, I mean, this lady's 72, but she's in very good health and mobile. And she said with herself, she was getting horrific nerve pain at one point in her life, a couple of years back. And even though she was doing Reiki on herself every day and it helped, it didn't cure the problem. And in the end, she had surgery and they removed a cyst. I think a cyst on the spine, I'm not quite sure. And she now has no pain. And she said it could well be that there's something that needs realigning or something surgical intervention needs doing in order to solve the problem. Now, I've also been talking to somebody that does shockwave therapy. I'd previously been to a top shockwave therapist in the UK who refused to treat me with my feet and believed I was suffering from complex regional pain syndrome. And he said, you don't know what pain is anymore. You don't know what comfort is anymore. He said, you need to get on pain meds and just forget about this. And whenever I spoke about the pelvic floor, the hip pain, etc., he was like, please just go. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. But I managed to find someone more local to me. He was more open, and this gentleman had been a radiographer and he's got some connections in London. And I told him that in the States they do shockwave therapy for the pelvic floor. I know there's one particular place that had success. And he was aware of it, but there's no one really in the UK doing it. And he's doing some digging around at the moment for me in terms of that. And I also went to see one of the world's best chiropractors or their colleagues, and I had an x-ray down there which they showed the cyst on my left hip, and they did an examination on me, but unlike anyone's ever done an examination on me, because normally when you have an examination of the pelvic floor, they do it on your side, but in this particular instance they did it while I was on my belly, face down. And what she found was my left pubococcyx was so hypertonic it cut off the circulation to her finger as she tried to examine me, which was interesting. She said it was very severe, and that's on the same side as my hip. So it is almost making me wonder, is it coming from the hip, and then the hip problem started after the foot pain? So is this a biomechanical issue? But then you got to ask yourself, well, why does this begin? Why does this begin? Why does it happen to start with? Because not everyone develops this. Other people have anal fissures and get over it after a few months, a year. Other people have plantar fasciitis, like me. My father does, and within a year he's cured. Mine doesn't. And I've been told by one chiropractor that my left ilium was had the greatest torsion of a ilium he'd ever seen in his career. But when I went to see one of the best chiropractors, they disagreed with that and said it was actually quite common, because I mentioned Joseph Merrick, the Elephant Man, and he looked at his ilium, how twisted it was. But the chiropractors in London state there's a distortion, a torsion of the pelvic floor muscles that produce the symptoms. I don't know. So yes, Reiki is definitely worth trying because it will help, and it might be something I might go down the line of learning it to do it on my own body, because it was had an extreme calming effect. In fact, after having the Reiki, I couldn't hardly get off the table because I was so dehydrated. It's so bizarre, and it was like I was a child again in my body. Everything was vivid. Everything was vivid around me. I had this buzzing of energy in my body, and all my symptoms just went. Interestingly, for my 40th, I've just been on a Butlins holiday here in the UK, a weekend with some school friends who I've not seen in 20 years, and I wondered whether to tell them a bit of my history, which I did, and I think they were a bit baffled by it all, to be honest. And interestingly, obviously on these holidays you have a lot to drink, which I did. And whilst I was drunk, and I don't normally drink alcohol, my symptoms at one point went completely and the pain went. So then it makes you wonder, is this a brain mind issue here? because when I'm stressed out with the symptoms, they get more severe. There's one methodology called tension myositis syndrome as a group, and they talk about potential neuralgia. There are some people with that who've cured by looking at the mind-body connection and just trying to forget about the symptoms, and then eventually they go. Because you end up in a PTSD type of disorder. I don't know. To me, it feels definitely a physical aspect as well to this, the way these things developed. First the anal fissure, a few months later plantar fasciitis, a year later left hip pain, whyi tear. 2 years after that, pelvic floor dysfunction, potential neuralgia. 2 months after that, then develop an inguinal hernia and then lost the ability to walk. So yeah, and I've done a lot of reading on primitive tribes like Daniel Lieberman, and I don't think if you went to any third world country, you would come across this. It could be coincidence, but every person I've ever met, one thing we all have in common is we've all been sat down in our jobs. I don't know anyone that's not been in that situation. If there is, please let me know, because I've not yet to meet any farmers, factory workers, postmen, dustmen, people that walk for a living, shop workers, that kind of thing, or even people that work in hospitals on their feet all day. I could be wrong, but yeah, I'm yet to meet one. Coincidence? I don't know. It just seems odd. I do know as primitive humans, we are meant to sit a lot, but there's also movement in the body, and when these people get old in primitive tribes, they maintain about 80% of their strength. I was also talking to a veterinarian about anal fissures and hemorrhoids, etc., and labral tears in particular, and he told me that labral tears in the animal kingdom is unheard of. In his career, he'd never seen a labral tear in an animal, which was interesting. And I also reached out to a zoologist who studies movement, who actually studied the elephant man using supercomputers. It take him 6 months to analyse movement, where compensation happens in the body and what the outcome is, because it was absolutely fascinating on the Discovery Channel. But unfortunately, he never got back to me. I do believe there is the expertise in the world to cure this if the people come together as a world. Unfortunately, as a society, we don't think like that. We always think of dollar signs and making money out of people. But I think society in the world is changing, and it will continue to change. The youngsters are more open to ideas, are questioning things. And I do believe the cure for this will be a worldwide effort. Maybe we need a centre of all the greatest minds in the world to come together, the greatest physios, the greatest scientists, the greatest doctors, the greatest surgeons, the greatest academics, the greatest spiritualists, to come together to solve this, which is why I am now going to be holding Zoom calls, conferences once a month with people around the world to come together so we can get answers and sort this out, because it's the only way. We can't just leave it up to 1 or 2 individuals and people that just want to make money off people. We need to work together. So yeah, that's just a quick update. Thank you, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.